Hey guys, back with another segment as part of our fundamentals series. Now this is a question that I get asked often, and this is not only by beginners but also by people who are advanced, and they'll say, Evan, should I be weighing my food cooked or raw? And my answer to that is it depends. For example, I think the thing that we want to keep in mind is that the ultimate variable when measuring food is water. What does that mean? It means that to get the most accurate measurement, you want the least amount of water. So when it comes to something like a grain, like rice, oats, you should be measuring them raw, dry, before you cook them, right? Because if I take, if I have a cup of rice is a cup of rice in its raw state, okay? Now, to that cup of rice, I could add 2 cups of water, 1 cup of water, 3 cups of water, therefore making for a different prepared volume, okay? Granted, the texture might be better or worse, but I can change the end result based on how much water I use. Same thing with oatmeal, same thing with pretty much any grain. Therefore, you should be measuring it when it's raw. You could either use a volumetric measurement, meaning a measuring cup, right? This is just really measuring volume, or you could use a food scale and measure the weight of it. Weight is actually more accurate because if you were to get 2 cups, right? If you were to measure a bunch of cups, take 1 cup, dump it out and measure it and see what it weighs out to, do it again, you'd probably get a little bit of variation. Not enough for it to really make any big difference, but weight is always the most accurate, although we don't always use it. A lot of times we'll say, well, a cup of oats or half a cup of rice, something like that. So grains, rice, oats, etc., measure them raw. A potato, on the other hand, also a carbohydrate, you're gonna cook it. As you cook it, it's gonna lose moisture, right? You should be measuring it cooked. Same thing with all your meats, right? Steak, chicken, etc. Take poultry, take chicken for example. They all have different amounts of retained fluid, okay? Because manufacturers will put them in some type of solution to beef up the chicken, to plump it up. 8 ounces of this chicken could be a lot different than 8 ounces of another chicken, right? You're gonna cook them both the same, but one's gonna lose a ton of water, the other one might not lose as much water. The most accurate measurement is gonna be once it's cooked. Once, again, there's the least amount of water present. The best thing to do is to use an online resource like nutritiondata.com, where it will give you a list. You can look up a food, right? And you can get the nutrition facts for it based on, whether it's per ounce or per cup or per 100 grams. And then you can calculate, if every morning, for example, I put 8 ounces of rice. I measure out 8 ounces of rice and I put it in my rice cooker. Now that gives me the amount of carbs that I'm aiming to get from rice for the day. All right, I don't just cook a bunch of rice and then start taking, well, let me take 2 cups of cooked rice. You don't know. It's always better to start with the raw measurement. Obviously, when it comes to liquids, volumetric. If it's something like olive oil or maple syrup, you're gonna measure with a measuring spoon, measuring cup, whether you choose to use cups or ounces or milliliters, that's entirely up to you. Keep in mind, when we're talking about ounces, there's a difference between fluid ounces and actual weight. So 8 ounces of water may not weigh 8 ounces. Actually, does it? I don't know, let's find out. Zero out the measuring cup. Okay, so 1 cup is 8 ounces. Okay, 1 cup is 8 fluid ounces, and it's 8.7 ounces measured on a scale. So fluid ounces and weight are different. keep that in mind. Say, for example, you want to measure fruit, right? You have grapefruit. Should you be measuring it in cups? You don't say, well, I'm gonna have a half a cup of grapefruit, or should I measure it? Well, if you have a half of a cup, depending on how the chunks of grapefruit fall into there, or how tightly you pack them, a half a cup could mean different things. Best thing to do, always go by weight. You can't fudge that. The weight is the weight. So to wrap things up, water is the ultimate variable, right? In cooked versus raw food. So you always want to measure food in the state that it has the least amount of water. If we're measuring grains, for example, measure it raw before you add water to it. That will be the most accurate. If you're measuring protein, measure it after you cook it, after it has lost its fluid. That will be the most accurate. There's the difference between weight and then volumetric measurements. Unless it's liquid, which you need to measure using a volumetric measurement, weight is always the most accurate, because depending on how something may get put into, say, a measuring cup, how tightly it's packed, 1 cup of something could mean different things. So weight is always the most accurate. That's it really for this episode. I hope you found it at least somewhat useful, informative. Hope it clarified some stuff. Either subscribe or go fuck yourself. No, just kidding. If you don't want to subscribe, just check back and maybe there'll be something else that is useful to you. So see you again soon. Take care.